Hello everyone and welcome back to Nier Reincarnation. I'm G, and we are going to be doing some more hidden stories today. We did Akeha and Priyat last time, and today in the honor of, well, not in honor of, but just because we did the EX stories for Lavanya and Fio together, I feel like it would be appropriate to do the hidden stories for them together as well. So, let's get started. I breathe in the dusty air of the arcade. Synthesized sound pulses from tiny speakers on the cabinet. The display before me gives a colorful flicker, and the game begins. A musical note appears on the screen along with a blast of song. I begin, to dance, stomping my feet on the correct panels in time with the symbol. I concentrate on the game as my feet fly, riding the waves of the synthesizer with my entire being. I forget everything happening at home, everything that happened at school. I dance. When the music comes to an end, I pause to catch my breath. Fervor seeps in from my body, quickly pulling back to reality. The screen shows the score for a player whose username is Lavanya. It isn't a bad score, but no one competes against me anymore. There are only a handful of arcades now that even have outdated games like this, much less people who want to play them. My gaze darts to the corner where a cabinet of the same game sits dark and alone. They used to rest side by side so people could play and compete for a high score together, but now it's covered in dust. Like a stone. Like a grave. A long time ago, Mom would have been on the other machine. When I was much younger, I'd often dance with Mom after my afternoon lessons. She was awkward in general, and especially terrible at dancing, and we'd always laugh when she stumbled. It was a good way to pass the time while we waited for Dad to pick us up in the car. But she isn't around anymore. 6 months ago, the illness that had been plaguing her for years finally set her free. I stand there and space out, letting a flood of images roll through my mind. Eventually, a staff member comes and tells me to go home. City law states that anyone under the age of 20 needs to leave the arcades by 6. Nodding, I grab my school's bag and head out. Dad's there when I get back to the apartment. He usually works late into the night, so it's unusual to see him home. "Welcome back," he calls out as he busies himself preparing dinner in our cramped kitchen. "Tell me if you're going to be home early," I say, and in case my annoyance isn't clear, I slam my shopping bag on the table with a loud thud. "I wouldn't have gone out of my way to buy dinner if I knew you'd be making something." "You were at the arcade," says Dad, conveniently ignoring my annoyance. "Your teacher said you're not allowed to go there after school anymore, remember?" I ignore him and go to the portrait of Mom sitting in the corner. I close my eyes and begin to speak, telling her everything I did today. It's something I do every evening, but this time I barely got started before Dad interrupts. "Are you listening to me? This is for your sake, you know. Your mother would be worried too." "Shut up when I'm talking to her!" I snap without opening my eyes. He doesn't know anything about me. All he does is nag, and every little thing he says is irritating. Why did this have to happen? We got along so well back when Mom was alive. "Hey Mom, everyone's annoying me. Dad, the people at school, everybody. I wish they'd all just go to sleep forever." A loud thud causes my eyes to snap open. I whip my head around towards the kitchen and see Dad sprawled across the floor. Even though he'd been nagging me just moments before, he now lies there in silence, no matter how many times I scream his name. They take Dad to the hospital. The doctors say he's fine. Just asleep. But that doesn't make me feel even a little bit better. I know about the sleeping sickness that's been causing panic across the city lately. People fall asleep, even though there's nothing particularly wrong with them. They never wake up. There's no cure. And now Dad has it. I visit him in the hospital the next day after school. I know nothing will have changed. He'll still just be sleeping. But I can't leave him there alone. The hall smells of medicine as I make my way down the hall to his room. The setting rays of the sun pour in, filling it with an ashy light. But when I get to the door, I see Dad standing next to his bed. He's awake. He's awake! I call out to him, my voice a mixture of shock and joy and nerves. But as the words dissipate in the air, I realize something is very, very wrong. "Dad?" He's facing the wall, a pen in his hand. He's scribbling on them over and over, turning them black, like a child might. When I look closer, I realize the mass of black looks like the kind of monster I'd seen in games back when I was a kid. A dark monster that resembles nothing more than a mass of thick, wiry hair. This isn't normal. Scribbling on walls isn't normal! But no matter how many times I call out, he never replies. That's when I realize his eyes are closed. He's still asleep, dreaming some unknowable thing as he scribbles darkness onto the white hospital walls, creating monsters. 2 weeks ago, Dad caught the disease that's been ravaging the city. It's called the sleeping sickness, and people who get it suddenly fall asleep and never wake up again. No one knows what causes it or how to treat it. And since my mom died 6 months ago, I suddenly found myself alone. But a few relatives reached out to help, so I kept going to school like a normal kid. Except I ended every day by visiting my father in a hospital. But one day I found him out of bed and scribbling a picture of a monster on the wall, even though he was still asleep. The doctor said they wanted to keep the drawing for research, so now I have to look at this black, horrible creature every day when I visit. I feel like it's watching me. I hear the other students singing off in the music room. There's a school-wide choir competition next month and all the classes are practicing for their part. But I'm not singing. Instead, I'm standing outside as my class president and his lackeys pelt me with questions. Why didn't you come to practice yesterday? I tell them I skipped practice to see my dad, but they don't care. Other kids have parents with a sleeping sickness and apparently they're still waiting to come sing a bunch of stupid songs. So I should just suck it up. It's all BS. My mom is dead and my dad is apparently going to sleep until he dies too. I'm unhappy enough at home. Sure as hell don't need people giving me grief at school. As the class president continues to berate me, I close my eyes and scream inside my mind as loud as I can. I wish you'd all just sleep forever! There's a loud thud, then 2 more. When I open my eyes, the class president and his goons lying on the floor, the same way Dad did 2 weeks ago when he collapsed. But then it gets worse. Way worse. Like someone pressed a switch, a continuous series of thuds and crashes ring out as people start dropping all around me. Students walking the halls, teachers lecturing at blackboards, the janitor and his mop. Even the sounds of singing suddenly cut off, replaced by the cacophony of thumps as bodies meet earth. I start running through the halls in a panic. Everyone is asleep. Everyone! The entire school has apparently caught the sleeping sickness at the exact same time. I run to the office and pick up the phone to call for help, but no one answers. Not the hospital, not the police, no one. Shaking, I run down the hall and burst out the door into a completely silent city. Everyone is down. Old people out shopping. Men and women in business suits. Kids. As far as I can tell, I'm the only person awake in the entire world. I wander the city in a daze. It feels like walking through a weird, dark forest. With no idea what to do, I make my way to the shopping center, figuring there has to be someone who's still awake. And the moment I pass through the district arch, I see a tall, thin shadow at the end of the street. Someone's awake! I think as I start waving frantically. But then my arm slows, and slowly drops to my side as I take a single step backward. Because the thing at the end of the street isn't a person. It's a monster. It looks a lot like the character in a game I used to play, and exactly like the thing Dad drew on the wall. I have to be dreaming. This can't be real. I look down for a second to clear my head, then look up again. The monster is still there. And then it sees me. The moment I catch its attention, it trills a pair of huge insect wings and rushes towards me. I should run. I should scream. But fear is my entire world. My body has decided that shutting down is the best thing to do right now. The monster lurches to a halt in front of me, staring down at my shaking, quivering form. And then, it talks. I want to eat dreams. I ate everyone else's. I want to eat your dreams. Its voice is coarse, like vocal cords being scraped over a cheese grater. But I can still understand the horrible things it's saying. My dreams? I whisper. Your dreams. All dreams. When I eat all dreams, I will become human. My body finally decides to let me have a modicum of control, and I take a step back, trying to put distance between us. But then a thought appears in my head. The monster said it eats dreams. Is that why everyone is asleep? Is this thing the reason for the sleeping sickness? It's an insane idea, and I wonder briefly if thinking it means I've lost my mind. But then I remember there's a monster standing in front of me, and figure concepts like sanity have probably gone right out the window. Is no one waking up because you ate their dreams? I'm clinging to this idea fiercely now, because if the monster caused everyone to fall asleep, maybe it could reverse the process. Give them back. Give them back! Give my dad's dreams back right now! The words come out of me in the loudest voice of my life, and the monster leaps away and begins to run. I don't even hesitate. I run after it, pumping limbs with newfound fury. I have to get my dad's dreams back. I have to wake him up. I have to. Because if I don't, my mom, the person that loved him with all her heart, would be devastated. I run down the eerily quiet main street of the shopping district in pursuit of the monster. All my classmates had collapsed into a deep sleep. It was an illness that had been getting a lot of attention in town recently, one where those who fell asleep never reawakened. The same illness that claimed my dad. But students weren't the only new victims of the disease. Everyone was asleep now. Everyone. Except for me. At the far end of the downtown shopping district where I'd come in search of other waking people, I'd found a dark monster that looked like it stepped out of a video game. I ate everyone's dreams, it said, and I was sure that's why everyone was asleep. But when I tried to scare the monster into giving the dreams back, it whirled around and fled. So I gave chase, because I wasn't going to let it escape until it returned Dad's dreams and made him whole. I dashed down the street, making sure not to step on any of the people sleeping in the middle of the road. Ahead, the monster runs with ferocious speed, occasionally pausing to look back at me, almost like it wants me to follow. I eventually enter a run-down building on the outskirts of downtown. With a start, I realize it's the arcade where I used to spend so much of my time. As I follow the monster through a set of broken, sagging doors, the eerie silence of the city falls away, and soon my ears thrum with the noises of arcade machines. I make my way forward, searching for the monster. Eventually, I find it standing in the furthest corner of the room, right in front of the darkened and forgotten 2-player rhythm game. I know this game. It's the one I used to play with Mom when I was a kid. And in the 6 months since her passing, I'd played it over and over, looking for a shadow of her memory upon its brilliant lights. Upbeat dance music suddenly blares out of the speaker as the machine springs to life. The monster stares at the neon screen and tilts its head, a human-like gesture without a hint of terror. This game's a lot of fun, I say, speaking to the monster before I even realize what I'm doing. It looks at me, gives a small nod, and timidly reaches out for the screen. But its hands are bulky and awkward, and I realize I'm going to have to take the lead. I drop a pair of coins into the machine, 2 coins for 2 players. Then we pick a song from the list. I doubt the monster can understand human music, so I choose for it. A song Mom and I used to play all the time. The screen explodes with light as the game begins. Notes fly across the screen in tandem with upbeat music. Our task is to step on the correct panels at our feet, and as I move my body, I feel genuine joy start to bubble up from deep inside me. It's so strange. But even with a monster standing beside me, I'm somehow enjoying myself. As I dance, I glance at the neighboring screen. The monster is hesitant, stepping on panels with clumsy, awkward haste. "You're so bad at this," I chuckle. And it's true. The monster is dancing like a clown, and I can't help but laugh. The monster makes something like a frown then, and begins moving its feet as quickly as possible, but the harder it concentrates, the more it loses the rhythm. And soon any kind of coordination has gone out the window in favor of flailing arms and legs about wildly. As I watch the monster's awkward movements, I feel something well up in my chest. A nostalgic yearning for a time that had slipped away from me so long ago. The next thing I know, I'm standing in perfect stillness. I've never given up in the middle of a game before. I can't tear my eyes away from the monster dancing next to me. It's so bad, yet its steps are filled with pure joy. A child suddenly presented with some new and unexpected toy. It all reminds me of something. I know these movements. Mom? What the hell am I saying? I wonder. I want to laugh and cry at the same time, but I can't help but think of the monster as my mom. I watched her dance like this countless times as a kid. I relived those memories countless times over the past 6 months. The monster stops dancing and turns its eyeless face to me. There's a pause, an eternity filled only with the sounds of unending electronic music. And the monster opens its mouth and murmurs my name in a dry, scratchy voice. The name my mom gave me. Everyone in town was asleep. My dad, the students at school, the people walking down the street. Everyone but me. It was all the result of a strange illness that caused people to suddenly fall asleep and never wake up. Then a monster appeared before me, one the color of an abyss. It told me it ate everyone's dreams, which I knew was the cause of the illness. Then it ran off to the old arcade where Mom and I used to hang out before she died. We played a dancing rhythm game together, and I suddenly called the monster Mom. And the monster replied with my name. It used my name! The same one Mom had given me. Now as I stand here stunned, it repeats my name under its breath over and over again. Like it's trying to remember something, or maybe confirm it. It then slowly walks over to me and reaches out to brush my cheek with a malformed hand.
I want to be human, it says. I can be human if I eat everyone's dreams, and then I can see you again.
The monster, my mother, speaking to me. I can tell she feels terrible for leaving me behind. I don't blame her. I'm stubborn, impulsive, and terrible with people, and she'd always worried about me. But now she has returned in the form of a monster. I pull my mom into a hug. Even though the armor on her body looks like it would be cold, it holds a human warmth. I'm so happy to see her. And yeah, maybe that happiness is all just a dream. But you know what? I don't care. I just want to stay like this forever. But I know Mom will worry even more if I say that out loud. Which is why I have to find a way to tell her I can go on. I'm okay, Mom, I whisper. I'm gonna be fine. But please give everyone's dreams back. Give Dad's dreams back. When I say that, Mom wordlessly unwinds me from her soft arms. The next thing I know, her darkened form emits a soft, faint light that sort of fades away into the air. Worried that she's about to vanish, my vision starts to blur with tears. But to my surprise, Mom's fading hands reach down and select a new song on the arcade machine. Electronic music pulses. Without a word, she begins to stomp her feet on the buttons, her fading body moving with awkward, uninhibited joy. She looks over at me. I can't read the expression on her blank monster face, but I can tell she wants me to join her. So I do. We dance together, giving into childlike glee, just as we did when I was little. And while my heart aches to watch her vanish, that emotion is no match for the exhilaration I feel dancing with her. Finally, the music ends. My feet stop. When I turn to look beside me, Mom is gone. There's no trace of the monster. I feel like I'm in a dream, but when I look at the score on the screen, a score for 2, I know she was here. When I step out of the arcade, the sleeping people are all sitting up, their eyes wide and bewildered. The monster, my mom, has given everyone's dreams back. I run to the hospital and discover that Dad is also awake. When I burst into his room, he's busy cleaning up the drawings he scribbled onto the wall while asleep. Drawings of a monster that looks very, very familiar. Kinda creepy I was drawing all this in my sleep, he murmurs. It reminds me of a fairy tale I once heard. One where people who die are reborn as dream-eating monsters. He pauses, embarrassed. He doesn't want to finish the thought and admit that maybe Mom died, become a dream-eating monster, and came to see us. But I knew the truth. Mom did become a dream-eating monster, and she did come to see us. But I don't tell Dad that. I don't tell him the truth, because I feel like everything that happened to me is barely hanging on to reality. And if I tell a single person about it, it's going to slip from reality to a dream. So instead of telling him, I join him at the wall and help him clean away the scribbles. I hope you've been keeping your room tidy, he says to me at one point. You don't get a pass on chores just because I've been in the hospital and couldn't remind you. Okay, seriously? Nagging already? But this time I decide not to talk back, because I know Mom will worry if we started fighting. I mull everything over in my mind as I watch the monster doodle slowly vanish from the walls. I doubt the loneliness I feel from Mom's passing will ever go away. But now I know she lives on as a dream-eating monster somewhere. I know she's watching me from afar. And that's why I have to keep walking. Why I have to keep going forward. Because I don't want to worry her anymore. The dream-eating monster is a species that instinctually devours dreams in an attempt to secure a human form. This particular monster, however, chose to turn the girl back into a human rather than keeping the form for himself. Then he's acting against his instincts. How kind! It must be love! Goodness, but these two are such a bother. Carrier always speaks in such a condescending manner while his substitute just mumbles under his breath. I know, if Mama can't say anything nice about them, perhaps I shouldn't say anything at all. Still, I find our conversations so unpleasant. Why do these monsters want to become human anyway? I mean, they're sturdy enough as it is. Far more admirable creatures rather than those human meatbags. How can you say such things considering all the knowledge you have on the matter? Oh, but I don't know as much as you, my dear. Perhaps you'd be willing to teach me more about them, Teach more. Well, how can I say no to that face? Carrier is right. I know far more about the monsters, which is why I understand just how much of a miracle his sacrifice is, and how close to destiny it flies. Not that Mama would teach that rapscallion a single thing. Hey, Carrier, is she here yet? Silence, you incessant boob! It's always she this, she that with you. Goodness me, that is a bit worrying, isn't it? Does this fool even remember why he's walking around like this in the first place? I'll better do my job and remind the elf that there is no playdate. When you eat the young Mrs. Dreams, you'll become human. I know. But of course you did. You are so clever after all, Mr. Lavanya. Good God, now I have to flatter this dunce just to keep him on track. You're working for me, pal. Me! And I'm the one using you. You ain't worth squat without me, and don't you forget it. Alright, that's enough internal screaming for one day. Best settle into work mode for the day and keep my darling idiots on the straight and narrow. Now then, I believe the young miss should be here soon. Hurry up. And here we go. Gloomy monster. This dream tastes bad. Shallow monster. Mine's great. I really hit gold this time. Doubtful monster.
Quiet, you! Taste doesn't matter!
SM. Don't be such a stick in the mud. Hey, you agree with me, right? GM. You are annoying. DM.
See, if you would be so kind as to shut up when you get the hint!
SM. Aw, that hurts. This is why all of you are such a miserable bunch of monsters. DM.
I'm fine being miserable, don't you agree?
DM. I want to be more cheerful. DM.
Ha! Like that could never happen to you!
DM. How do I be cheerful? SM. Think of what a delightful future you'll have once you become human. DM. Delightful future. DM.
And what delight is there in becoming human?
SM. Oh, that's easy. Actually, I have no idea. GM. Then why do we want to be human? SM. No idea. GM. Then why are we alive? Two figures stand atop red leaves blanketing the cold stone floor. One is the dark monster, the other the girl who follows so close behind. There's so many things I want to do with you when you turn human, Mr. Monster, says the excited girl.
Like what?
Asks the monster without turning around. First I want to look at flowers with you. Next I want to eat cake with you. Then I want to do study with you so we can learn lots and lots and lots of fun things together.
What nonsense.
Though the monster immediately dismisses the girl's ideas, the strides which had kept him slightly ahead of her slow to a stop. After a moment, he peers down at her and says gruffly,
Just let me eat more of your dreams, then maybe we can do some of those things.
A smile blooms on the girl's face. Okay, Mr. Monster, it's a promise. A silent girl stands in the dusty stone path and stares at a closed door. She holds thoughts of the dark monster in her heart, the one with willful eyes that appeared before her and Mama and then vanished. Though they pursued the monster, they eventually lost sight of it. However, there can be no doubt it now lies beyond the closed door. The dark monster stands on the precipice of despair. Unable to understand human emotion, perhaps she will never comprehend the meaning behind the child's pain. The monster hates this thought and curses her own powerlessness, but she also knows she can be the child's friend and stay with her. I know how you feel, but let's keep going. Mama's voice comes from behind the girl, gently urging her forward. And she's right. They have no time to stand about. They must restore the warped tales within the memories, collect the weapons, and take back the lost fragments. Also, they might save that child. You didn't get to be human, Mr. Monster.
It is all right.
Amidst their struggles and clashing emotions, Monster and Girl at last assume their original forms. Their hands intertwine. They stand together in the light, and as he basks in the girl's warmth, the monster comes to a realization. He thought he wanted to become human, and so followed his instinct to consume dreams. He believed that was his sole purpose in life, but now as he looks at her smiling face, he realizes his purpose is to be her friend. At long last, he has found the answer he was searching for. Alrighty, well, I made a mistake. I didn't realize that I didn't have all of Theo's stories yet. So, instead, we will go with someone else. I'm not 100% sure yet. How about Argo? Argo seems good. Argo's not one who's in a pair. Forward. To date, I have published several biographies based on oh my god, the diaries of adventures. But this one is quite special. It is the final tale of the man I most admire. The reason I never touched on this story was because I always knew it would be the final entry. As you know, I myself am a practicing adventurer. As I pen this forward, I am planning the greatest challenge of my life. It is likely this book will be published in a world where I no longer exist. But as I prepare to venture into a dangerous and unexplored land, I must free myself from the anxieties of the future so I can place my life on the line. This book must be published, for I firmly believe an adventurer's soul lives on through those who read their tales. In fact, I consider this to be the record of a soul that can only exist within adventures. As such, I hope you read every word about this lofty man and take his tale as deep into your heart as I have. Adventures are surprise and discovery. This is a universal truth, and why I cannot stop. I guess you'd call that my catchphrase. At the very least, I've repeated the words so much I often feel a sense of exhaustion in them. Why do I adventure? What is an adventure? This is the answer I always give the rabble who do not understand adventuring, the ones who view me as a simple and shallow man. Surprise and discovery, I say. I have crossed the world and conquered unexplored lands in search of these things alone. I have found deep lakes that slumber in the desert. I have traversed mountain ranges so tall they kiss the very sky. I could go on and on. My accomplishments are many, and I have ventured from the haunted depths of caves to the abyssal black of the sea. There is no adventurer who does not know my name. But though I have no interest in over-the-top fame and nominal awards, I take some small pleasure from inspiring a younger generation. On that day, I ventured into unseen lands. I sought the Shimmering Falls, a waterfall of legend whose rapids were said to flow the color of gold. But when I arrived at the place, said to be its origin, I found not golden falls, but a golden city. As I climbed a sheer cliff to get a better view of the captivating sight, I heard a scream below me. My gaze snapped down to see a younger man who had missed his footing and was dangerously close to tumbling over the cliff. His youth had made him bold, but now his face was warped by fear. Sweat covered his body, brought on by the panic of his impending fall. Were I to move on, his hand would eventually slip, plunging him into the unfathomable ravine. An adventurer who dies by accident has only themselves to blame. I consider this a universal truth, yet felt ill at the prospect of leaving a valiant youngster to his imminent demise. "Stay calm," I called to him. His attention immediately snapped to me, his eyes wavering with dangerous hope. "Do not panic, I will come to you," he replied with a bite of his lip and a slight nod. Careful not to spook the young man with bits of falling rubble, I descended and extended a hand. I was met immediately by his own, one with a sense of desperation in the grip. The softness of his palm told me he did not yet know the full joy and pain that adventuring could offer. The wind is cold and dry enough to crack my skin. Having reached out to the young man who was in danger of falling, I found a nearby ledge where the two of us could take our rest. His face was stunned and bloodless. Staring death in the face will do that to a man. Yet he made no word of acknowledgement, no word of thanks. In fact, he seems to be willfully ignoring me, and after a minute of silence, he reached for the cliff in front of us once more. How interesting. More emotional weaklings might have taken offense, but the adventurous spirit inside me appreciated his recklessness. Encounters between people in unexplored lands are rare and usually fleeting. Even if we forge a kind of friendship in that moment, we never know what happens to the other once we part ways. I sensed great potential from the young man. So much, in fact, that I feel a burning desire to know where his life might take him. Still, an adventurer needs more than calm presence of mind. They must be willing to risk all if they are to open the way to new lands. "Let me show you the secret to rock climbing," I said as I pushed past him. The boy, who had been disinterested only moments before, began to follow me in silence. I took that as a good sign. He had pride, true, but was also flexible enough to accept advice. Still, I saw annoyance on his face that he was in this situation, and found it almost charming. I'd generally taken on new challenges alone. Solitude was how I'd found my satisfaction. But this is a hard life, and sometimes a lonely one. Perhaps, deep down, I'd been searching for a kind of apprentice all my life. If I could teach what I knew to the young man, like pouring water from one vase to another, it might give greater significance to the rest of my accomplishments. With that thought, I felt a new zeal for what little remained of my life. I patiently taught the boy tricks to climbing. He absorbed them earnestly and immediately began putting them into practice. Courage and skill? Yes, he was a rare find indeed. I wondered if I would even have anything to teach him by the time we made it up the mountain and down again. Once he had a plethora of skills under his belt, we reached the top of the cliff and hauled ourselves over the edge. And what awaited us there was a sight more beautiful than my meager words can possibly describe. The Golden Falls. They shone with a brilliant light the color of treasure. It was intense enough as to blind a man if he stared at it for more than a few moments. But the boy cared not for the sight before him. Instead, he just looked around briefly before turning to me and asking a simple question. "So where's the gold?" I burst out laughing before informing the boy that there was no actual gold to be found here. The color of the falls came from how sunlight reflected off the water. He looked genuinely disappointed. He'd apparently heard a rumor that real gold had been buried at the source of the falls. After learning he couldn't reach them on his own, he'd been planning to split the treasure with me instead. His greed made me burst out laughing again, but not in anger or disgust. Oh no. This was no chance meeting, you see, for greed is a lifeline to the survival instinct. I knew then and there my instincts about the boy had been correct. He gave me the evil eye as I guffawed, not bothering to hide his dissatisfaction. Then, sparing not even a single moment to appreciate the sight before him, he hurriedly turned to leave. But I stopped him. Few places within the entirety of nature are so grand as the Golden Falls, and the men who gain the chance to see them are even fewer. The true treasure was not gold or wealth, but the view itself. The boy scoffed when I told him as much, but his expression finally loosened just a bit. "You're a real idiot, aren't you?" he said. And he was right, because I would do anything, in the name of adventure. Things took a bad turn in this part of my tale, and I found myself in a predicament more distressing than any I'd encountered in all my years of adventuring. Years had passed since I traveled to the Golden Falls, and now I had my heart set on conquering a jungle teeming with large serpents, deadly insects, and ferocious beasts. It had been easy going at first, so much that I let my guard down, but the moment I did, I brushed up against some brambles and scratched the back of my hand, drawing a single bead of blood. That faint smell was invitation enough. The next thing I knew, I was face to face with a starving, ferocious tiger. It bore its fangs and claws, eyeing me like a hunk of meat on the dinner table. Then, as a chill ran up my spine, it leapt towards me with murder on its mind. I could not block it. I could not even move. Claws rent clothes and skin, blood poured from wounds on my chest. Though I hit no vitals, the intense pain was enough to steal away all rational thought. I should have run, you see. That would have been rational. Instead, I grabbed my weapon and ready for battle. A single wounded person against a mighty tiger. It was absurd. I had a 1 in a million chance of victory, if even that. The thought of death passed through my mind like a chilly breeze in the early morning dawn, and I felt my eyes close in spite of myself. To the tiger, this was an invitation. There is no easier prey than one who has surrendered, and the beast saw straight through my despair. Before I knew what was happening, it leapt upon me a second time. "If you're going to eat me, make it fast." I thought those would be my last words before oblivion, but no matter how long I waited for death, it never came. I slowly opened my eyes and beheld the tiger lying on the ground, its life stolen away. Standing on the hillock above me was the boy I had met all those years ago on the cliff. I was shocked. My mind reeled. It took agonizing seconds to recognize who he was, and even longer to realize he'd saved my life. The gallant young lad had ended the tiger in a skilled ambush. keeping me and my frozen resignation ever in the corner of his eye. He was larger than I remembered, thicker and more stalwart. Countless ordeals had hardened him as a forge tempers iron, turning his once weak body into the ideal physique of an adventurer. To be honest, I was more impressed by this than the fact that he'd saved my life. "We're even," he said curtly. Clearly he'd not forgotten the day I reached for him on the cliff. More to the point, he remembered it so well that he'd been searching for a chance to repay his debt for all these many years, following me in my journeys while simultaneously honing both body and mind. Perhaps some of you, perhaps many, would find such a thing unsettling, but all I saw was an earnest, focused lad who wanted to do what was right. A great feeling of fondness for the boy passed through me in that moment, and before he could turn to leave, I mustered all my remaining energy to give him both my earnest thanks and my praise. Sadly, these words only caused his cheeks to redden and his eyes to drop. It seems as though he'd spent his entire life without ever receiving a word of thanks, and had no idea how to take mine. Gods, but it was so like him. I laughed then. I couldn't help it. I roared with laughter, and his expression quickly moved from shame to rage. "I saved you," he snapped. "Stop laughing!" Of course, it only caused me to laugh all the more, and after a few moments a smile clearly crossed my face. From that point on, we traveled together at my request. It took a while to convince him. He was crabby, bashful, and reluctant to trust. But his fate was sealed the moment he started talking to me. I knew that together we would face ever more challenging and fascinating adventures. We would find surprises and make discoveries that set any previously untrodden areas to shame. We would find miracles not begotten by God, but created by us. My life, and my future, was now filled with light. The young man and I conquered numerous lands after that. Though his logical mind was a bit lacking at times, he was able to overcome even the worst of predicaments by the way of his superior physical strength. And as I watched him grow into a strong and dependable companion, I found myself harboring more fondness for him than I ever expected. Ah, but it's true, this proud woman finally fell in love. The boy, no, a man now, seemed to favor me as well. He told me he suffered greatly after we parted ways at the Golden Falls and couldn't dismiss my face from his mind. I wasn't sure how to respond to that. I've never been much for compliments, and my speech is hardly what you'd call elegant. Thankfully, we saw through the other's fault and pursued a relationship with single-minded stubbornness. We eventually married, and soon thereafter were blessed with a child. To ready for the birth of my subsequent motherhood, I abandoned the adventuring life. But though I was no longer climbing mountains or tromping through woods, I somehow felt more adventurous than ever. Adventure is wanderlust, you see, and to my great surprise, being a mother satisfied that itch. I found that raising a child was a journey filled with more surprise and discovery than any I had ever before undertaken. I'm satisfied with my new life. As I write these words, my husband is out on another adventure. While I wish he would spend more time at home, I gave up trying to convince him long ago. Whenever I ask, Wow, that is not a sentence. Whenever I ask, what he always says to anyone who questions him. That's just how I am. Oh, but he can be an infuriating man, and yet I know the passion that drives him, and so I always forgive him. I was the adventuring idiot who invited him on a journey and asked him to be my husband, after all. I was the one who changed his life, and I must also be the one to send him off. That's why I want to end my diary here. I want to enjoy the present instead of reminiscing endlessly about the past. The present is my future now, and is filled with light. So together, my daughter, husband, and myself will venture down the crooked, wonderful path that is life. There's no adventurer I look up to more than my mother, so I mauled this record after her diary. Mom's diary does indeed end there. Despite how much she complains about Dad being stubborn, she's the exact same. She never changes course when she's made up her mind. People experience all sorts of meetings. I believe my parents' union was inevitable, maybe even a kind of fate. Even so, I still find being the daughter mentioned in the diary to be a bit embarrassing. But even though the diary ended where it did, there's more to the story. There's a second diary, you see. But it isn't very good, and the handwriting is so bad that it's almost impossible to read. It's Dad's. I inherited the habit of writing in diaries from both my parents, and even as I write this afterward, I find my thoughts changing. I thought this would be the last chapter, but now I think I should write Dad's biography too, both for the sake of little brother and for my parents. I mean, it's sad to think his story might never survive, right? Alright, it's decided. I'm going to write a sequel. My next work won't be about an adventurer I look up to, but an adventurer who deserves love. The same love that pushed me to adventure myself. It might be a bit more slipshod than the work you just read, but I promise to make it enjoyable nonetheless. And to do so, I will cross the threshold into that land. Surprise and discovery. I survived so I might keep these things alive, so please wait for me. So please pray for me. Let's continue our adventure together. Hee, are we gossiping here? I hope you don't mind if I join in because Mama has a juicy little morsel to share. So when I went to check on that adventurer the other day, I found him moaning and groaning as he hung from a cliff by one hand. His arm is as thick as my entire body, and yet there it was, just slipping away. Well, I was so shocked I yelped in surprise, and I knew his record didn't end there, so it was all quite embarrassing, let me tell you. What happened next? Well, just as he was about to fall, I heard his wife yell. She was cradling their little girl and staring at him with that look, so I knew he was in real trouble. Then she demanded that he stop training and come play with his daughter. Can you believe it? That man was just training. And right after she yelled at him, he switched hands and started humming to himself. I swear, some people. Mother's Ballad. Sturdy scoundrels descend from mountains' peaks. Screams startle from sleep. Hide all the swaddled babes in the house, quick, quick. I was born by the sea, raised on the blue. If I stay on the mountain, I'm naught but a Cost's dam. Blustery snow, swelling courage. All who protect, embrace rage. They are coming, quick, quick. They are coming. They are here. All who protect, stand ready. Father's Ballad. When home I drink, I brood. I gaze out windows and wish for cliff and ash and bone. I think Mother Earth, how she battles for me. I was born at the foot and raised at the peak, and if I descend, I'm just another worthless old man. A lion's fate, unknown stars. All who are valiant, rise, rise to the zenith. I must go quickly, I must go now. All who are valiant, rise, rise to the sun. How'd you two meet? In the mountains, naturally. We met when I attacked him. Sorry, you attacked him? Yes, I was a bandit then. What, I don't look like it. I was abandoned by my parents at a young age, so I had to do what was necessary to survive. It was so easy to take things from climbers. I never think a woman could do them harm. Was he one such climber? Yep, and don't think I worried about him for a second, either. I approached while he was in the middle of a climb, pretending to be a frail little girl before trying to stab him. But it didn't work. He just sort of slid out of the way. Did he know how to fight? Who knows? I had the same question, but he just laughed and said, I fight mountains. Of course I can handle at least this much. He then said to me, quit banditry and try adventure instead. Heh, he laughed too. He had this big infectious laugh and it started me laughing as well. It's such a nice memory for me now. Anyway, I stopped attacking climbers on the mountains after that and we had 2 kids together. I'm really thankful for all he did. So glad you're happy. Thank you for your time. Where did you meet him? I ran in out of my house in the harbor and he showed up one night looking for a room. He was so filthy I could barely tell he was human at first. You ran an inn? Yes, it's closed now. There was a little island nearby that was impossible to access due to the tides. But various foolhardy folk kept showing up to try their hand at the challenge anyway. It kept me in the black for a few years, but then, you reached the island. Can you believe it? Well, once that happened, the shine was off the whole idea and our stream of adventuring guests dried up. I had no one to take over the business, so I just shut it down and walked away. Still can't believe someone like him pulled it off. Did he leave a bad impression on you? Oh, the worst. The worst! He came in covered in mud. The only thing you could see were those 2 beady little eyes shining in the dark, like a child's. My brother and sister were adventurers, you see, and I recognized those eyes right away. I hate adventurers, the whole lot of them. I think we'd end up as family. Still can't believe my rotten luck. Aha! Well, thank you for your time today. So where did you two first meet? In the tavern where I worked. Where one of our more inebriated patrons was bothering me, so he stepped in to save me. He saved you? Oh yeah, I picked up the drunk with one hand and tossed his ass right out the door. I remember noticing how the muscles in his arm flexed and also how he didn't seem fazed by any of it. He just went back to his seat without a word and continued as before. It was hot, I guess. And gallant. I couldn't stop thinking about how wonderful he was, so I gave him a pint to thank him and he threw it back in a single gulp. But he was already a few ales in and that put him over the top. His went all red and then put his face down on the table and started to snore, so... Hello? So at that point I thought about how wonderful and cute he was. He had a charm about him, you know? The kind of thing you wouldn't expect from looking at him, but that... Excuse me, sorry, but I think we're good here. No, I'm not finished. I can talk about him all night. Where'd you meet Dad? I forget. You're kidding. I'll let you read my diary once you're older. It's all in there. I want to read it now. We all want things, kiddo. Okay, fine. Why'd you marry Dad? Oh, I think I treated it like a little adventure. I wanted to conquer someone who only ever thought about adventuring, you know? Your aunt didn't approve at all, but it's kind of exciting to have an obstacle to work through. You sound like him. Do I? Are you happy you married him? Of course I am, because that's how I got to meet you. And I think that this is a pretty good place to cut it. We have seen Lavania's story, we have seen Argo's story. And as we go forward, once we get more and more complete groups of hidden stories, as you can see, there are definitely some that I still have to finish up, particularly in Sun and Moon. But anyways, as we get more of those, I will continue reading them. But for now, thank you all so much for following my playthrough of Nier Reincarnation, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye now!